Outside, the last of the early evening light was evanescing. Someone switched on the outdoor lights, and little bulbs illuminated the garden, giving it the look of a provincial town square in France. Peter wandered through the raised beds of vegetables and herbs. He stopped at a large tomato vine and picked a tomato. Isn't it the best scent ever? He turned and saw a slender woman with a short blonde pixie cut standing next to him. The best, Peter said. My mother used to grow tomatoes in her garden, and I always thought that if I made a perfume, I would make tomato vine one of the notes. Peter nodded. The vines actually smell even better than the tomatoes, she said. You make perfume? Peter asked. No, I said if. Oh, well, you sounded all professional with the whole notes and all. She laughed. Maybe that's what I should do. Make perfume, she said. But don't you have to be famous now to make a perfume? Oh, you're not famous? Peter said. Forget it, I'm not talking to you. Don't you know there are famous people here at this party? He turned around and walked a few steps away, then turned back. She was smiling. He noticed her two front teeth overlapping slightly. It was a really nice smile. I'm Peter, he said. Greta. She gave him her hand, and he took it in his. It was small and delicate, and for some reason made him think of a little bird. Who do you know here? He asked her. No one, she said, except Lindsay. She turned and looked at the people milling around the yard, chatting. You? She's my sister, he said. I was wondering, Greta said. You have the same nose. Peter self-consciously reached his hand up to touch his nose. He rubbed the bridge of it and then drank the rest of his beer and looked around for somewhere to throw the bottle. Here, I'll take that, Greta said. She reached out her hand to him, and he stared at her, confused. What? You'll take my empty beer bottle? She withdrew her hand, and he could see the flush of embarrassment on her face. Do you often solicit the trash of strangers? He asked. It's a habit, she said. I have a daughter, and I always have my hand out. Gum, candy wrappers, food she's chewed up and spit out. At the mention of her daughter, Peter glanced down at her hand to see if she was wearing a ring. Her hand was bare. I have an idea, he said. Let's go try some of that food over there, and whatever I don't like, I'll just spit in your hand. Greta threw her head back and laughed, and Peter was surprised at how pleasant it was to hear her laugh. You're funny, she said. I don't think I'm going to stay very long, though. Don't go, he said. She looked at him questioningly, and it was his turn to be embarrassed. I mean, why are you going to go? He stammered. Do you have to get home to your kid or something? I don't have to, she said. She's with her father right now, at his place, she added quickly. Do me a favor then, and don't go, he said. Standing next to this woman, a stranger, he felt as though he was a man at sea drowning, and she a buoy thrown to him as he gulped his last mouthful of salt water. The intensity of the feeling was so strong that it eclipsed any anxiety or fear of rejection that he should have been feeling. All that mattered to him at that moment was that she not leave him there alone. She looked slightly rattled, her eyebrows knitting together in consternation. Suddenly, he grew mortified by his outburst and raced through his mind, thinking of graceful ways that he could recant. Too many drinks, he could say, though truthfully, he'd had only one beer. Jet lag. Maybe he could pass it off as a joke. He looked down at his shoes as he felt his discomfort creeping through him in the awkward silence. Then he looked up and found her staring back at him with an inscrutable smile on her face. I'll stay, she said.